Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning in for another episode. I recently asked the viewers for some different topics to discuss on the channel, and I got a bunch of questions pertaining to bait weights. Whether that's Texas rigs, how do you know when to go with a light Texas rig versus a heavy Texas rig, or maybe a jig, or maybe lipless crankbaits? A lot of different baits come in different sizes and different weights. And the questions were all pertaining to how do you know when to throw a light one versus a heavy one? It's a really good question because I honestly feel like if you're always throwing the same size weight, whether it's a Texas rig or a lipless crankbait, you're probably missing out on a few extra bites. I do really feel like you can hone in that technique and really get it dialed into the specific weight that you need to be throwing. So I'm going to break this up. I'm going to give you a bunch of the different uh, reasons why I throw light baits or heavy baits, and I think it'll be helpful to you. So before I do get into that, though, I do want to remind you I do a bunch of lake breakdowns with fishthemoment.com. I'll put a link in that in the video description. We take lakes that are throughout the country, we break them down into a specific season and provide you with information that tells you specifically what the best patterns are going to be on that lake to help you catch more fish. So check those out. Also, if you're looking to support the channel and you need to purchase tackle, please use my Tackle Warehouse affiliate link. I'll put that in the video description as well for you. A great way to support the channel. All right, so a lot of these questions I've had are pertaining to the different weights that you throw. So let's talk about, say, a Texas rig or a jig right now. One of the first things that I always like to look at uh, when I'm talking about different weight sizes is the conditions that I'm fishing. So the first thing I want to talk about is going to be whether or not the lakes are pressured. So if the lakes are really pressured with people that are, say, going down the bank, fishing the different objects, you would tend to think that you should probably go with a lighter bait. But in reality, I have much better success with a heavier bait. And the reason for that is that heavier bait falls much faster and creates better reaction strikes. So if I'm really on a heavily pressured body of water, I tend to go with heavier baits versus really light baits. It just seems like it generates more reaction strikes for me. So that's the first thing I like to do is look at the body of water, determine, hey, is this a pressured body of water or not? If we're just going off simply pressure, I'm going to choose generally a little bit lighter overall weight if I'm just fishing traditional type cover and I feel like they don't have a lot of pressure. The next thing that I'm going to evaluate is the watercolor. Watercolor is one of those things where I generally like to have a slower fall in dirtier water. The dirtier the water, the slower the fall, and it really is just to keep my bait in the strike zone longer. So if I'm, say, flipping laydowns or flipping around stumps, and I'm choosing a Texas rig or a jig, I really want to bait that fall slower because it's going to just let the fish be able to track that bait better. So, I'll generally tend to grab a bigger, bulkier bait, bigger cross style flapper legs, something that's just going to keep that bait moving slower with a lighter weight mixed in as well. If I'm fishing really clear water, I'm the complete opposite. I like a bait that falls really fast. Those fish can see the bait from a long distance away, and you need to trigger them to strike. So a fast fall makes them commit. They either know right away they're going for it or they're not going for it, but they're not getting a good look at your bait in either case. And you tend to just have much better action with a faster falling bait in clear water. You also want to evaluate your water temperature. Water temperature is similar to your water clarity. If you've got dirty water and it's cold, you definitely want that slower fall. If you've got warmer water, you can get away with throwing heavier baits because the fish are more aggressive, they're reacting better, and they're going to be willing to like snap on that dime to go after the bait from a little bit further away. But if your water's cold, the fish are going to be in much more of a lethargic mode and they're just not going to be willing to move nearly as far. So, generally speaking, if I'm fishing dirty cold water, definitely going lighter baits. If I'm fishing warm clear water, definitely going heavier baits to try to get that much faster fall. Another thing that you want to think about is the type of cover you're fishing. This is kind of a no-brainer, but it is true. If you're fishing really heavy cover, you're going to have to go with a heavier bait. You need something that's going to punch down through those weeds or get down into that brush pile or get down through that thick lily pads or whatever it is that you're fishing. The cover will dictate the heaviness of your bait. If you just need the, if you're fishing something that's really sparse, you can get away with much lighter baits. Pretty obvious, but it's something to be aware of because it also comes down to being efficient on the water. You can generally fish, say, thicker grass with a light weight, but it might take you 3 or 4 casts to actually get through the canopy of that grass versus you're going to have probably the first cast you'll get through with a heavier weight. So it's all about efficiency. You can definitely fish some thicker cover with a lighter weight, but it's going to take you more casts to actually get that bait to fall down and into the cover. The last thing I really like to think about is the actual bottom structure of the lake that I'm fishing. If I'm fishing really soft bottoms, so mud bottoms, just overall softer bottom, I like to go with a much lighter weight. I don't want my bait falling down and actually bearing down into that soft bottom. That's going to get your bait full of that little filament. It's going to just get a bunch of gunk on your bait. It's also not going to really achieve anything uh, other than just kind of balling up your bait. If you're fishing a hard bottom, that's when I like to go with a heavier bait. That heavier bait will fall faster and actually make sound when it hits that bottom. Plus, you're also going to be able to create some sort of, smoke cloud or bottom cloud when that bait hits. You got to think about it. If you're fishing soft bottom, it does not take much weight at all to stir up that bottom and create that little bit of a silt cloud, which can be an attractor. Too heavy of a weight will fall too far, get stuck in that bottom, and create too much of a smoke cloud. But if you're fishing, say, sand or you're fishing rock and gravel, you actually want that heavier bait to fall fast because it's going to hit the bottom. It's going to make some sound, which is always a good thing. But at the same time, if there is, say, some sand, you might still create a little bit of a plume, which is going to draw the fish over because they get interested. Anytime they see bottom motion, that's something that's a good thing. So if I'm fishing heavy cover, I do like to go with a heavier weight. Now, if you're fishing rock, the one thing I want to point out there though is if you go too heavy, you're going to end up getting stuck quite a bit in the rock crevices. So too heavy can be a nuisance, but generally speaking, I do like to go a little bit heavier when fishing harder bottom contour. The last thing too, as well, is just water depth. That's pretty straightforward again. But if you're fishing shallow cover, you can get away with much lighter baits. If you're fishing deeper cover, you're obviously going to go with a little bit heavier bait to keep your bait down in the strike zone where it needs to be. But it's not simply just grab half-ounce weight every time you go through a Texas rig, or every time you throw a jig, or every time you throw a lipless crankbait. If you're making adjustments in bait size and bait weight, you're going to be able to get your bait to perform much better in the conditions that you're fishing, which is going to lead to better efficiency and more bites. So hopefully this helps answers those questions that I've been getting from the viewers regarding bait weights. There's a lot to take in, but it can be something that really can help you. Let me know in the comment section if you've got additional video suggestions for me. I'd love to answer some of your questions as well. Otherwise, guys, stay tuned. We'll have a new video coming out tomorrow for you.